Hello, my name's Dan Harris and I'm the founder and CEO of Neurodiversity in Business. And I'm really delighted to welcome here today Jane Pearce. Jane is one of the founders of a great organisation called Autism Forward. And within Neurodiversity in Business, we're often getting asked very kind of deep technical questions around each particular element of neurodiversity. And I thought it'd be really great to hear what an organisation which is very forward-looking. Jane, I hope you'll like that terminology. And kind of strategic around helping autistic people break through those barriers that we still see in the workplace. So, Jane, perhaps you'd like to do a more eloquent introduction to yourself.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you very much. Yeah, I founded Autism Forward about 5 years ago. I have a stepdaughter who's autistic, and I was very conscious that there is a real cliff edge in support for autistic people when they leave education, whether it's university, whether it's college, whether it's school. They're really, there's this sort of cliff edge in support. And myself and my co-trustees wanted to be able to do something to sort of bridge that gap, to help people with that, one of the most difficult transitions in life anyway, which is that transition from education into employment. And we do that by funding one-to-one specialist support from mentoring organisations who are independent of us as a charity around the country. And those mentors might be autistic themselves. They've often got an autistic family member, and they have experience not only of supporting people into employment, so knowing what you need to do, get to find a job, to get through the interview, but also to help people understand how their autism affects them and what adjustments they will need to ask for in the workplace. So they act as a support for the individual, and also a bridge into that work can often sort of help advising the employer as well, and making sure that transition goes as smoothly as possible. Since we set up about 5 years ago, we've supported around 250 people. We are currently supporting about 80, and our results are absolutely outstanding. We have, on average, around after about a year's support, 85% of the people that we support are either in paid or voluntary employment by the end of that, so with about 55 to 60% in paid and the remaining in voluntary, which is quite often where they are comfortable being. So that's remarkable when you compare it to the stats that we see, sort of typically around 16% of people in employment, or 32% in some kind of employment. So, and we find that one-to-one support is really effective at really tailoring that support to the individual. And the other side of our work, because I'm former city lawyer myself, and one of my other trustees is a former banker, and we have a management consultant, Helen Needham, on board as well. And we therefore have a lot of connections within the city. So the other half of our work is actually working with employers and gathering together to really understand best practice. And that's where there's a great tie-in with what you're doing with Neurodiversity in Business. And that's where we're very hopeful that we can find plenty of ways to work together, work with your organisations, as we will always, it's a combination of awareness raising, but also putting practical steps in place to help people, putting internships in place for autistic candidates. So yeah, and again, we found our contacts have really grown, and the interest and improvement in opportunities and inclusion for autistic people has definitely improved since the 5 years I've set the charity up, and that's really encouraging to see.
Great. Well, look, I'll double down on that kind of topic of cooperation, because Neurodiversity in Business is only a collective. We are but a coalition. So collaboration is built into our DNA. So that's why I was really keen to speak to you today, Jane. Right. And I've been hugely impressed with what you guys have been doing historically, because it's not just that focus on the corporates in terms of best practice, etc. But I'd really love you to explain a little bit more about your model, whereby you're actually providing funding for autistic adults, young people, to be mentored and supported in their route to employment. So tell us a little bit more about how that works. And gosh, where do you get your funding from as well? That's impressive.
So the funding comes from generally from my husband's contacts in the city. We have some. Oh, I've lost you. We have some. Sorry, I've lost you, Dan.
I'm back.
Okay.
Let's just start that again.
Let's do that one again. Do the question again, yeah.
So I've asked the question, and then you can respond. So my question was, where do you get your, well, it was broader, but ended, where do you get your funding from?
So we've been very fortunate enough to have some very good contacts within the city who have been very supportive of our work. They're generally people who've got a connection to autism. We've held, pre-COVID, we held a number of sort of in-person events like cycling events where we cycled from a shop we'd helped fund actually in my stepdaughter's school in North London to Cafe Track, which is run by one of our mentors in Northampton, which provides work experience for autistic people. We raised a considerable amount of money on that event and enabled us to fund a lot of support. We were lucky enough to get some national lottery funding during COVID. But generally it's from personal contacts and fundraising. And we also have an extremely efficient model because we don't have any paid staff within the charity. All of the work is done by myself and the other trustees on an entirely pro bono basis. So we have basically zero cost at that level. All of our funds are used to pay our professional mentors who are independent of the charity. They work in organisations already providing that support, be it privately funded, be it funded by their own charity, or through Access to Work, DWP funded Access to Work support for people in work. So they have the experts and we pay an hourly rate. So, and if an individual stops, we no longer pay for them. We're only paying for the support they actually get. Okay. And the individual will apply to for a support via one of those mentoring organisations that we work with. They'll send us an application form with support of that mentor, and usually we have a 2-week turnaround time on that. And the funds aren't paid to the individual; they're paid directly to the mentoring organisation. But we find that one-to-one support is incredibly effective.
Got it. And look, maybe in a future podcast, we might be able to get someone involved who's actually been through that cycle and benefited from your support. Because we'd love to hear from them what the kind of the user journey is in terms of finding out about your organisation, the support, and then where they've ended up. Absolutely, yeah. Jane, if I may, can I ask for your views on the recent government initiative, that 7.6 million that was designed to fund, I think it was 2,000 adults into employment. There was a focus on autism, but also broader kind of learning disabilities. And I think, that sounds impressive, doesn't it? But I think if you worked it out, is it about 3.8 thousand per head? How far does that go? How successful might it be? We typically, that's typically the amount that the maximum amount that we will fund somebody for. As I say, it's incredibly efficient because we're working with very experienced mentors, and all of the admin work and the monitoring the progress is done by us on a pro bono basis. So that is incredibly efficient, but it is because we are working with real experts with a track record of supporting autistic people into work. So my query with funding like that is whether or not funds are getting wasted through the admin of the scheme, and whether or not the people that the government are working with that are using to run these schemes are actually experienced at this. Because in our experience, it is quite hard to find mentors who are both experienced as an employment coach and in the steps of getting into work, and with helping the individual understand how their autism affects them. So that's my note of caution there, is that we get people passed on to us from other sort of schemes, job centre schemes or work schemes, where they've had somebody who absolutely does not understand their needs, doesn't understand their individual needs. So that would be my note of caution there. That is enough money if you're working with people who are expert in what they do, is what I would say. Got it. Okay, thank you. And then just switching focus slightly now, Jane, into the kind of corporate world. So tell us what you're doing with businesses and how you support them with resources and better understanding of autism. Well, we pre-COVID, we were holding quite regular roundtables in person, sort of every 2 to 3 months. Each one would be hosted by one of our corporate contacts, quite often law firms, because I'm a former lawyer myself. And we would gather together our contacts, which are really people within sort of HR, D&I or line managers who have an interest in improving opportunities, inclusion for
neurodivergent members of staff. So we would meet together, we would each time pick a particular topic to focus on, and that might be reasonable adjustments, it might be how to adjust your recruitment process, it might be internships. And we would typically get one of our autistic colleagues who speak at that event, and perhaps one of our mentors as well, who as I say, work with individuals and provide training to employers. And then they would do a presentation, and we would sort of have a panel discussion afterwards. And those have been very helpful, but moving people on with their journey, from them understanding what other firms are doing, learning from their experiences, and then we can sort of put signposts to them, organisations who can then help them put those into practice in their own organisations. And typically we've, the mentors we work with, the one in London is AS Mentoring, and they have worked with a lot of employers putting in place internship schemes, typically sort of alongside their normal graduate schemes. They might have some routes which are, also for autistic candidates. They've worked with people like Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse, Invesco, Capita, and sort of big, and Herbert Smith as well in terms of law firms. So big organisations within typically within the city to have this, and we often find there is sort of a ripple effect from that internship scheme that involves training of a lot of staff and awareness, and then people who within that organisation who've got a diagnosis themselves actually have much more confidence to step forward and say, actually, no, I would like to be involved with this, or would like to set up a neurodiversity network, or I could do with a bit of support, or so we find it's really helpful in terms of providing support for existing employees as well. Okay,
thanks, Jane. So that's a really good kind of understanding that you shared with our audience. I guess I'd like to conclude with just a question. I'm going to put you a little bit in the hot spot here, Jane, which is, what's a key message that you want the corporate world to understand about the power and strength of leveraging autistic talent?
I think if you are missing out on a real pool of talent, if you don't ensure that autistic and neurodivergent people can access employment with you, and you are you will harness and you will enable your own existing employees to thrive if you create an environment where they are comfortable to ask for adjustments they might need. And a huge thing for me about, and it seems fairly obvious from the actual definition of neurodiversity, people really want to avoid groupthink, and you're only going to do that if you employ people who think differently. And creating an atmosphere in which neurodivergent people can thrive is key to that, and it's key for the rest of your staff as well. And I would say that almost always when we have internship schemes, people have said these changes that we make, actually they would benefit all employees. It would benefit all our employees if we spoke to them about how best they communicate, if they prefer written instructions, if they prefer email instructions. And actually, I was at the Law Society's first neurodiversity event last week, and one of the law firms there said, actually, for the last couple of years, what we've been doing, when we put a new team together, the litigation department, we have a OneNote document where everybody puts in their preferred working practices, not just the autistic members of the team, everybody. So we know how we all communicate best, how we can best be reached, when we can be reached, whether we're working home, if we prefer email. And that to me was, absolutely indicative of where an adjustment that was made with autistic people in mind actually benefits the whole team. And that's been enormously successful with them.
Great. Well, look, I would normally summarise the session, but I wouldn't be able to put it more eloquently than you just did, Jane. So I'll let you have that final word. The only thing I'd say is we would love to have one of your mentees, if that's the right term, on next time, and they can kind of talk us through what that kind of life cycle is.
Yes.
And I would just say to the really large membership of Neurodiversity in Business, we've got around 400 to 500 organisations on board now. You know, do look into organisations like Autism Forward, and individuals can contact you, I guess, via your website, which I think is
absolutely, yes, yeah, I think
autismforward.org.
Yeah, .org.uk. Yes.
Got it.
So my email's just jane@autismforward.org.uk. So absolutely, do get in touch with me directly. We are very helpful. We are very happy to talk and you know, perhaps, you know, organise meetings or organise awareness, you know, events with you and help you on that journey.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate your time today, Jane, and good luck with all of your future success. Continue helping all of those hundreds of people. And to our audience, thank you for dialing in and listening again today, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in a few days. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.